starting out as the Minister of Inspections on Kaladesh, and then ending up as the most powerful person on all of Ravnica, looks like Dovin Baan is coming up in the world. Greetings, hatchlings! We are here for another Ravnica Allegiance spoiler unveiling. We're going to talk about the newest version of Dovin Baan. Now, to do that, let's head on back into the history and talk about what he started as. Now, he doesn't go too far back. He's coming from Kaladesh, where, as I mentioned at the beginning, he is the Minister of Inspections of the Consulate of Kaladesh, all right? And what that means is he was in charge of inspecting different artifacts and things of that nature to determine if they met the standards. Let's talk about what his description, what he looks like, first of all. He's tall and thin, always impeccably dressed. His suit is partially encased in whorls and filigrees, you know, fancy little designs made out of brass. And the bits of that brass, they end up hissing and ticking as he moves along. So you can just imagine all these little noises, just tiny little subtle noises as he moves along. Now, he has an innate gift that is augmented by magic, and it allows him to clearly see the flaws in artifacts and systems. Basically, any system or machine, he can see the flaws in them to the point where he can accurately predict their weaknesses and when they will fail. And that makes him really, really adept as a Minister of Inspections. That's actually demonstrated through the card Fragmentize, which I really like the flavor of, in all honesty. It works very well. Let's take a look at that for a moment here. So that is a sorcery that costs 1 white. It destroys target artifact or enchantment with converted mana cost 4 or less. And the flavor text says, too much friction on your bearings. Your countersinking is inconsistent, and there are lines in your casting. Dispose of it and begin again. And that, obviously, that quote is attributed to Dovin Baan. It's a perfect example of the flavor behind the man. And you can see in the artwork, you can see a gigantic press crushing, absolutely crushing the invention of the poor, heartbroken inventor who actually designed the thing. Basically, it's like, no good, start again, crushed and destroyed, commence anew, showing what Dovin Baan is about in that regard. So basically, at first, he is involved in the storyline with Tezzeret and Kaladesh, the suppression, I should say, the suppression of the rebellion that happens on Kaladesh. He is instrumental in stopping it. Now, he doesn't really agree with the way that Tezzeret handle things, but he goes along with it. He wants to help protect the inventions, and also he's trying to minimize injury to the populace. When it comes to later on, where he is sending Baral after Chandra, he does not give Baral extra powers in terms of saying, you can do whatever you want, here's extra firepower, because he's worried about the populace of Kaladesh, which is good because it leads into showing how he will be useful in his future role. And you can also see his loyalty to the law and upholding the law when it comes to Baral actually confessing his crimes, because Baral confesses that basically Chandra was lied to and that her family met its end in a different way, and Baral was actually a criminal. So Dovin ends up having Baral arrested and taken care of, and that shows again how excellent he is going to be when it comes to leading the Azorius, because the Azorius are the Guild of Law. So having somebody who is obviously puts the law up on a pedestal like that is going to be useful. Also, somebody who can see flaws in systems and things like that is going to be adept at working with law systems. So honestly, he is an excellent fit for the new Grand Arbiter of the Azorius. And if you don't know what Grand Arbiters are, they are the leaders, the entire leaders of the Azorius. The Azorius essentially lead Ravnican society. They are the lawmakers. They are the ones who are overall in charge of Ravnican society. So before we talk about the new Dovin Baan, let's take a look at the original Dovin Baan Planeswalker. We'll see how he works with his flavor and how everything ties together. So he is 1 white, 1 blue, and 2 colorless. His +1 loyalty ability is, until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Now, this reflects his ability to see the flaws in systems and people and see their weaknesses and take advantage of that, so that's excellent. His second ability, -1, you gain 2 life and draw a card. In all honesty, that one doesn't really tie in too much to what he seems to me. That seems to be a very generic ability that doesn't have much tie in to what he actually is. And the final ability, his -7 ultimate, which is you gain an emblem with your opponents can't untap more than 2 permanents during their untap step. Now this again feels like something that ties into his knowledge of people's weakness, his ability to see flaws. You can basically lock your opponent into a box there. And there's some cards that help illustrate that as well. But I just want to stop and admire the absolutely amazing artwork on this card. He looks fantastic on. He's sitting there, he's got an artifact outstretched like that. Now you can see from his eyes, you can actually see if you look really closely, his eyes are reddish purple, but there's a kind of energy actually glowing up from his eyes as well. This to me is his augmented sight that he is using to see if there are any flaws whatsoever in this artifact. And he's surrounded by a whole bunch of these tiny little servo creatures, one of which he's inspecting. He's got this amazing gorget setup, which is the neck brace that actually has multiple lenses. I love this multi-lens setup where you can get all kinds of detail in with it. Honestly, he screams Artificer. I love the fact that his clothing and the background of where he is kind of match in terms of, if you look at the hand he has placed on what I assume is the larger artifact, that might even be the Heart of Kirin, I'm not 100% about that, but he's got his hand resting on that artifact with the light glowing out of it. But if you look on his wrist, you can see the filigree and the design. And if you look in the background on the pillar and the tubes, it has the same kind of design. The artwork is absolutely amazing. I like the little flashes of glowingness from all the different artifacts. And just, he looks amazing in his crimson robes. The artwork is an absolute home run. Tyler Jacobson nailed it. That's some real talent, honestly. I'm genuinely impressed with that. Now, in terms of illustrating his skill with Artifice and how it was on Kaladesh for him, you can actually look at cards like Mechanized Production, right? And this is 2 blue, 2 colorless. It's an enchantment aura. You enchant an artifact you control with it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. And the flavor text ties this whole card together. Give me 8 walkers, I'll give you the city. And that's Dovin Baan. So that to me is really, really cool. The artwork for Mechanized Production is absolutely lovely as well. You've got the gigantic, like huge hulking, like city, well, the walkers, right? That's what he's talking about right there. I assume it's a Peace Walker. That was we talked about that previously in another video when we talked about Colossuses. So if you want to know about the Peace Walker, head on over and check out the Colossus video, Colossal Magic. Can't miss it. It'll be in the playlist at the end of this video, in fact. Now, I love this artwork. You have the walker, you have all the banners that are hanging down from it, and you can actually see that it looks like there's another walker starting to be worked on off to the side there. It looks to me like that's what's going on. It looks like they're partially constructing it, although it might technically just be a statue as well. I don't know. But I like the impressive scope of this Colossus that they're showing there. I enjoy the fact that it looks to me like there's actually, is there? Let's just double check here. It looks like there's actually 8 banners in the artwork, although that's really, I like it when the numbers on the card and the artwork tie together. Either way, this is showing, boom, Dovin Baan can take over the entire city, give him the means to create these walkers, and then he'll take the walkers and take over the city. I like that. It's basically like, okay, once I have 8 walkers, I can take complete control of the city. That's all he needs is 8 giant robots. Who better then to be in charge of maintaining order on Ravnica than Dovin? Honestly, he fits right in with their very meticulous nature, the ability to see flaws in things. He's going to be able to nitpick and tear apart laws and things like that. It makes him fantastic for the leadership. So that's definitely a big win in my books. Now let's take a look at the cards from Ravnica Allegiance. We'll start out by looking at the new version of Dovin Baan, and then we'll talk about a couple of the other cards that add to the flavor of him and help illustrate what he is and what he represents to the world of Ravnica. So the card itself, nice and cheap, 1 blue, 1 white, 1 colorless, comes into play with 3 loyalty. I like the fact that if you notice, his loyalty abilities have the same costs as the previous version of Dovin Baan, which is so awesome. He's got a +1 loyalty, a -1 loyalty, and a -7 loyalty, which are exactly the same, not the same abilities, but the same costs as the previous one. So his +1 ability is until end of turn, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty counter on Dovin. So basically, that would be his soldiers going out and enforcing law and boom, raising his strength, his status in the city, which increases his strength, his prestige, his ability to influence. Now, the -1 ability is create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and you gain a life. And that ties into his previous existence as the master of artifice over there on Kaladesh. So that also fits into his flavor perfectly. Now, his -7 ability. Look at the top 10 cards of your library, put 3 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This could represent his ability to look through systems, gain knowledge, and sort out what needs to be done, figure out the best path. In all honesty, in terms of ultimates, it feels like a pretty weak ultimate for a Planeswalker. A lot of ultimates will win you the game or put you in a really good position to win the game. Now, I'm not knocking his -7 because you do end up getting 3 cards out of the top 7. So you get a nice boost to your hand. But it certainly doesn't feel on the same level as the ultimates of other Planeswalkers. And I think the reason for that is because his +1 loyalty ability makes it surprisingly easy to boost up his loyalty. That's my belief. I think it's probably just because getting to 7 loyalty on him wouldn't be that difficult. 1 activation of his first ability would put him to 4 without any creatures attacking. And if you happen to have 3 creatures on the board, you're already at 7. So it's only going to take a turn or 2 to get him at his ultimate with very little problem. Now, turning to the artwork there, I love it. He's just standing there. He has one of those crazy lens setups that we saw on Kaladesh, the multi-lenses, which is great. You can see him standing there in the Azorius Senate. You can see other members of the Azorius kind of shrouded in the background. You can see a Thopter flying around that he's brought here with him. He seems right at home. He's got the right kind of robes and look, posture, everything. He's got a very strict and very, like, I don't know exactly what the word for it is, but his posture is on point for a regal leader of the ruling body of Ravnica. He totally fits the part, man. It looks like he's changed up what he wears to a degree, probably to fit more in with the sensibilities of the Azorius. His stuff seems a little more plain, in all honesty. When you look at, remember, when we looked at the previous artwork, when we looked at his cuffs here, they were very ornate with the filigree kind of thing. In this, they're a lot more simplistic. Now, the part around his neck here, the cuff and collar kind of thing up here, it does have a bit of that filigree action going around the neck, so it is a nod to how he used to be. He's got the tabard there that's in the middle of his robe that matches the Azorius. Honestly, he looks absolutely fantastic. The deep purple of the background, he just stands out against it so much. It's like he's being lit up by the screens that he's looking at. So he seems like an excellent fit for leadership of the Azorius, and we can actually see that illustrated in a couple of other cards. Let's talk about those. We've got the Azorius Locket. Now, this is a 3 colorless artifact. It taps to add a white or a blue. And you can pay 4, either white or blue, any combination, sacrifice the Azorius Locket to draw 2 cards. Same as all the lockets, it's a full cycle. The flavor text is where it really comes in here. Mandatory lockets enable the tracking of all Senate personnel for improved security and efficiency. So, anybody who is a part of the Senate is now required to have an Azorius Locket, and that way it is not only on top of improving security, it makes everything more efficient. If you need to locate people, they can be located through their lockets, through magical means. I enjoy the artwork on this locket. Honestly, it's very nice. You've got the Azorius symbol there in the middle with what looks like the law magic scroll going on in the middle. It's got a pretty straight, like, it's not as plain as a Boros locket, but it's still not over the top with decoration as well. It's right there in the middle. It feels nice. I really like the way. I also like the fact that it's kind of resting on a cloth bed. Overall, the artwork really works for me. I enjoy the fact that these cards also have the Azorius symbol watermark on it. That stuff is pretty dope. Now, the other card that helps us take a look at how Dovin Baan is fitting into this new world, on top of changing the Senate, we see the effect that he has on the ruling body. We can see that he is holding over them with a tight fist because he appreciates efficiency. It's one of his skills, is finding inefficiencies and removing them. So with the Azorius Guildgate, we get another bit of flavor text to help world build with him as well. Now, Azorius Guildgate enters the battlefield tapped. You tap it to add a white or a blue. It's one of the 10 gates, part of the Dragon Maze running the maze. We'll probably talk about that more in depth at some point. But for now, just know that they are part of a mystic setup throughout the entirety of Ravnica. The 10 guild gates have real significance. Now, the flavor text says, if the populace fears our authority, then I'd say we have an appropriately sensible populace. That's fantastic. It's like, of course they're concerned about us. Of course they fear our authority. That is wise, because we will use that authority as we need to maintain order. Now, he demonstrated when he was on Kaladesh that he genuinely cares about protecting the populace. So while they fear his authority, he views that fear as useful for maintaining order. It's not the fear of a tyrant. It's the fear of, if you commit a crime, we will catch you. We are efficient. There is no escaping the long arm of the law in this case. That is essentially the equivalent of that to me. Now, the artwork on this is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, showing a nice shot of the actual guild gate itself nestled there in the middle. That's the triangular part there up at the top of the staircase in the back. You've got all the little spire parts. This is the entryway to get to the Azoria Senate, where all laws that govern all of Ravnica are established. So this is important. This is a gateway to the seat of power on Ravnica. And to me, this is a home run. Honestly, Dovin Baan really fits in. At first, when I heard they made him the Grand Arbiter, my brain went, I don't know how I feel about that. But after I reflected upon it and looked at the reality of it, he's perfect. He's literally perfect for the job. I can't think of any other white, like, you go, what are you going to do? What are you going to put somebody like Teferi in there? Teferi has other concerns. He still has to try and figure out how to return Zhalfir from the void. Oh, I feel for Teferi, man. That's a long running story.